Alright, so here we are back with another Hobby Basics 101 tutorial. This week we're covering dry brushing. It's a very quick and simple technique. It helps provide a lift to your models once you've got your base coat and your wash done. It very quickly highlights them and makes them look a little bit more finished and presentable for the tabletop. It also can do a couple of other things, but we'll go through that at the end of the video. For now, let's just jump straight down to the hobby desk and let's see how you actually achieve this finish. So the rains have hit, makes it the perfect time to come in, sit down here at the painting table and actually get some models painted. This time, as I said, we're going to focus on dry brushing. The first things you want to think about. When we're painting, we normally use brushes like this, different sizes for, you know, your base coats, your highlights, your washes, etc. But we're actually going to put them aside for painting this model. We're going to bring in some of these. So these are a mixture of brushes that we can use as dry brushes. They've all got one thing in common, which is a fairly flat or slightly domed surface to be able to catch the areas that are raised on the model. So these two here are actually Citadel dry brushes. They're a great starter dry brush. They do the job. They do exactly as they intend to do. Give you a brush, you can use it dry, flick it across the model. They've got a decent length of bristles. They've got a nice flat surface. They've got fairly wide coverage. They're pretty good. But what I'd recommend is going and grabbing these. These aren't special brushes. They're not, you know, your artist opus level stuff. They're actually makeup brushes. You can buy them anywhere that you can buy makeup. You can generally buy these brushes. This is one of my favorites. It's a smudging brush. You've got eyeshadow, blending eye brush, eye crease brush. They all perform a different task in dry brushing. So how do we go about dry brushing? We've got our paint, and what we normally do is we'll take it out of here, put it on the palette, mix it with water and just apply it to our models. But this is where dry brushing is different, and it's another good way to quickly get miniatures on the tabletop, as well as learning some good foundation skills. So we're going to actually cover this in a couple of models. First things first, I've actually got a tank here. That's right, so we've gone bigger than an infantry model. We've gone up to a tank now. And this is an ideal candidate for dry brushing. There's a couple of ways to do it, and I can show you both ways on this one model. The other one we've actually got this beastman. Now what I've done, I've got him basically up to a battle ready finish, much like we did with our Space Marine in our last video. He's just got his wash drying now, but he does have some areas of fur in around the legs, the chest, the shoulders and the back. And that is an ideal candidate for dry brushing. So what we'll do, we'll put him aside for now and we'll quickly go onto this tank. We've got our paint here. I'm using Dawnstone. It's just a nice mid-grey. Same as normal. Check your paint and give it a really good shake up before we pull it out onto the palette and start painting. So I'll grab a decent load out with my normal painting brush here. Just put it on the wet palette, or on your paint palette, your palette pad, whatever you use for your painting. We're going to just take a touch, about half as much as we normally would. We just want a little bit of water so that it releases really nicely from the brush when we do this. Give it a good mix, and then get as much paint out of this brush as you can. We're actually going to wash that up and put that brush aside. We've got here some paper towel, and that isn't for cleaning our brushes. We're actually going to be using that to dry our brushes off as we're ready to apply our paint. So we've got our paint mix there, we've got our model and our paper towel. So first things first, take your brush and just load it up with a bit of paint. You just want it to sort of look a bit like that. Work it into the bristles. And then we'll come over and we'll just start. You can circular motions, you can up and down, it doesn't matter how. We just want to wipe some of that off and wipe it into our paper towel. What we'll do, we'll give that a test now. Use the back of your hand, back of your thumb. That's actually not coming off too badly. That's a pretty good consistency. It's just light on my thumb, you can barely see it, and that's what we want. So what we'll do, we'll pick an inconspicuous spot of our model. Just, you don't want to put a lot of pressure on this. There's probably a little bit too much on there for my liking, so I'll just go back to my paper towel and rub a bit off again. And we'll just work along all these super high raised areas for now on the underside, just to work that paint off the brush a bit. Just when we get to these flats, it'll pick it up a bit nicer. Now if you're doing, say, a Space Marine tank or something like that, and you've got it all base coated blue, doing exactly what I'm doing here is a quick and easy way to actually get that vehicle highlighted and on the tabletop in no time at all. You can use this to do your miniatures. You can dry brush a whole miniature if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. It will come up looking great, and you'll have a really nicely painted army if you do it all the same way. So just go ahead and just start. Now we've worked some of that off the brush, just start working that through. I actually want to colour this. I don't want it to be black, but I also don't want it to be too bright of a grey. I just want sort of a nice mid-tone. So I'll now just work my way through this model, just picking up all these areas, trying to pick up as much as I can. It's going to look patchy to start off with, but as you work and work and work, you can see that it's now starting to fill that in and not quite look as patchy. The less paint you get on the brush, the better the effect actually becomes. Because as you can see there, it starts becoming a bit more even. So just still not using a lot of pressure, and we're just going along, catching all those edges, filling in all those gaps. Cross hatch it, go both directions, go in circles, like that. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but it's applying this paint to the model in such a way that we're not giving it a full solid coat. We're allowing those shadows to still come through. What I'll do, I'll reload my brush a little bit here, and I'll work down a side where there's a lot of texture here. So there's a lot of texture here to pick up, which will really throw this effect off a lot better. So what we'll do, just come in, like I said before, work some of the paint off. If you feel it's a bit heavy, you can go back to your paper towel, take a bit more off. All I'm doing, I'm just hitting these super sharp raised details first, just to help work it into the bristles and the brush. Come down here, do these. At the end of the day, it's all going to get done anyway. So if we just work along there, see how it's just picked up those edges really nicely. Like I said, you can use this to actually paint a whole miniature. At the end of the day, it's your hobby. If you're happy with this look, then go for it. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start working in here and picking up all this textured details. And see how that's starting to really pick that up nicely and give a good contrast. It's allowing that black to still be there. It's showing a little bit of that black through, so it's a really good weathering agent and a way of weathering your models quickly. There's so many uses for dry brushes. That's why it's actually more of a fundamental skill to carry in your toolbox than simple highlighting, because it can do the job of any other skill we teach from now on in. So here we go. We've taken our side down. It's looking pretty good. We've picked up all those details. We've got some nice sharpness on there. We can come up here and take this in. You can go in swirls, like I said. You can go crosshatch. Just whatever's going to pick up these details. I know there's a raised edge there, so I want to go across it one way. I want to take it the other way, and that's given me a nice little subtle highlight through that crack. I can do the same here. Go that way, down, that way, up. If you feel it needs a bit more, just go over it again. This is a very, very slow process of building up layers, but a quick process to complete overall. I mean, we've painted the side of this tank in next to no time at all. So what I'll do, I'll keep going on that and show you when it's done what it will look like. So I've now gone over that with 2 good passes of my dry brush. My brush is still wet. I haven't even washed it out yet. And I just want to show you one last trick before I put this one down and move on to the next one. And that is, when you've got a dry brush, you can actually come in with your brush on a 45 like that and very quickly and easily pick out a rough highlight in a solid band. So as you can see, I've gone through that in sort of no time at all and highlighted that whole tank tread while I've been in here doing my dry brushes and just picking out those details. Now, I'm happy with that. The thing is, with dry brushing, it can look a bit patchy and uneven. You may have to go over it with 2 or 3 very light passes and just build the colour up. But that's no different from when we layer our models and base coat and things like that anyway. So what I'll do, I'll put this one aside for now and I'll finish that off at a later date. And we'll come back in a moment. I'll wash this brush up and we'll come back in a moment and we'll dry brush this fur on this Beastman, this 40k Kill Team Beastman, and just show you how dry brushing can be a supplement to any other painting form that you do. So stick with us for a minute. We'll just let the last bits of this wash dry and we'll come back and dry brush that one up. So this is where keeping some of your older brushes or buying specific just really cheap artist brushes with a flat edge and soft bristles is really good, because this is a lot of small areas to go over. You don't want to go using the same brush I just used on that tank. That would just cover the whole model. We're only going to be doing this in select areas and using it as another tool to get our first part of our highlights. So what I'll do, I'll grab some Scrag Brown and we're going to set this up the same way that we did for our tank. So we'll grab a decent brush, make sure we've given it a good shake. I'll put it just down here and I'll just add, again, just a touch of water, just a little bit less than you would if you were going to layer or base coat or, you know, normally paint models. So I've got my dry brush, same process as before. I'm only putting it just on the very tip of the brush, as you can see. And then on our paper towel, just work it into those bristles. Swirls, straight lines. Now I'm going to do this one a bit heavier because I actually want it to affect the colour here. And what I'm going to do is just flick it across those details, just to pick up those raised areas, just like that. Now, doing it like this, dry brushing can be very, very messy. So it's a good idea to plan your model out and do your dry brushes before you start layering your model and start doing your highlights and that sort of stuff. So all I've done here, I've put my layer of my skin down so I could identify where my fur was. And now I've given it all a wash, and I'm just picking out those raised areas of fur. Just to pick up the detail that's there. I'm not pushing this in, I'm not trying to coat the model with this. I'm using a very fine touch. I can almost do it with 2 fingers. It's that fine of a touch. And we're just picking up those raised areas. Go around these legs and that. And we're using this as a supplement to our other form of painting. So we're going to paint the rest of this model as we normally would. We're going to layer it, we're going to wash it, and then we'll come in and use our more advanced techniques of highlighting and alike to get it done. But for now, this will help supplement, and it'll make it a lot easier to actually paint this fur. Now, this is the last sort of bit of fur I have here, just around this hoof. So what I've done, I've gone over, I've got it all just lightly picked up, so that we've still got our shade, we've still got our base coat, and we've now got our fur. But I'm going to push this just a touch further, just to show you how you can change a model by simply adding another layer. And this is exactly what I do when I highlight as well. So I won't need much of this stuff out at all. I'm only doing a very small, very light touch dry brush. Now that's come out of this pot a little bit more watery than normal, so I'm not going to add any water to that. It's already going to flow nicely. I haven't washed this brush out. I've just run it around my paper towel and got most of the paint out. Now I'm just going to give it a couple of quick dips to keep it very light on there. I'm going to work it through quite well. I want it to be like this, where you almost can't see any paint coming off. I'll give it another quick flick across my hand, and now I'm just ever so lightly hitting these super raised details. I'm not going in every direction like I did on my first dry brush. I'm just giving them a couple of quick passes, and this will just pick up the really high bits of that texture, and just give them a little bit more of a lift, so that they blend in better with our finished model then. Just that, anything you can do to create a bit of extra lift can sometimes elevate your models from just being gaming pieces that you throw onto a board to something that you can be proud of in your display case. You can show off. It can be a talking point to other people, and you can go, yeah, I did that, I created that. So just this little extra care step, just very quick, very light, very deliberate. I'm going to come back in and focus a bit more around this face, because it's going to be a very strong feature of this model, around that area there. I'll wash my brush out and we'll have a look at what we've got. So we've now got a few little tones of fur going on there. It gives that fur a lot of depth. I could go ahead and dry brush my skin. I could go ahead and dry brush my cloth. I could go ahead and dry brush my horns. I could do whatever I wanted. I could use one of these brushes to just lightly pick up some raised details on my horns up there and just help speed that painting process up. And that's what this is about. This is about getting the best quality finish you can as quickly as you can. And that's where dry brushing can be a really, really good foundation technique to just sort of take it from a base and a wash up to that next level very, very quickly. And it can help you identify whereabouts you want to apply your highlights later on. So we'll jump back up and have a quick chat and wrap this video up. So there you go. We've gone through a couple of techniques there. The first one, doing that Astra Militarum Hellhound. That is a great way of painting vehicles. It also showcased a great way of highlighting vehicles rather than sitting there for hours on end and drawing lines across all those angles that are there. Using a dry brush, doing it on a 45, running along it very quickly, it can create a very, very fast but effective and neat highlight and save a lot of time, but get something that looks fantastic on the tabletop. As you saw in that second part, we did the Beastman fur, and we've actually done that as a bit of a bonus, or a bit of a application that we can add to our toolbox. Rather than picking out each individual piece of fur, we've done it with a dry brush and saved ourselves hours of just layering, base coating, washing, highlighting, layering, repeat, repeat, repeat. We've done it in a matter of a couple of minutes and got a really effective 3 or 4 tone looking finish like what we're going to have on the rest of our model. So it's something you can add to your toolbox, but it's also a great tool to have if you're going to use contrast paints, which I think we'll cover that in our next video next week. So what you can do is actually dry brush your models up before we apply contrast paints, and it will actually help enhance the contrast paints and do 3/4 of the work for you before you even get into challenging and technical skills. It can really quickly get models on the tabletop, be it color dry brushing or for contrast. So that's it for this week, guys. We'll see you all next week. Get your brushes, get them dry, and get some paint on your models. Till then.